At 9:17 a.m. on March 6, 1944, Technical Sergeant James Rodriguez crouched beneath the left wing of a P-51B Mustang at Debden Airfield in England, watching his pilot get ready for a mission that likely wouldn't end well. The pilot was First Lieutenant Carl Mitchell, a 26-year-old with 11 combat missions but no kills against the German Fw-190s. The Germans had sent 22 Fw-190 fighters to intercept a bomber stream near Brunswick, and Mitchell would be escorting them straight into the enemy's path. Rodriguez had been maintaining Mustangs for 3 months and knew them well. They were fast with incredible range, capable of reaching Berlin and returning. At high altitudes, they were formidable. But the P-51B had a deadly flaw that was costing American pilots their lives daily. At speeds over 400 mph, the ailerons locked up, making the control surfaces nearly impossible to move. The pilot was left fighting against 200 lbs of force, and no amount of muscle could overpower it. German pilots were aware of this flaw. The Fw-190 could roll at any speed, and in high-speed combat, this difference often led to death. American doctrine advised pilots to avoid rolling scissors with Fw-190s, maintaining speed and altitude advantage, keeping the fight vertical and avoiding high-speed turning engagements. But Mitchell had tried that strategy 11 times, and it hadn't worked. The Germans were too clever. They would force American pilots into high-speed rolls, then wait for the controls to lock, taking them down. In the last 6 weeks, the 8th Air Force had lost 47 Mustangs, most during high-speed engagements when pilots couldn't escape fast enough. Rodriguez had witnessed too many deaths. The first pilot he lost was Lieutenant Robert Chen on February 28, 1944. Chen, a California kid and Stanford engineering student before the war, was smart and calculated everything. He would explain aerodynamics to Rodriguez as they worked on his aircraft, even drawing diagrams in the dirt. Chen had a younger brother, 14 years old, and wrote him weekly letters advising him to stay in school and pursue engineering instead of flying planes. During a fight over Hanover, Chen set up a perfect energy trap, luring an Fw-190 into a high-speed dive. His plan was simple: pull up hard, forcing the German to overshoot, then reverse and shoot him down. But at 430 mph, Chen needed to roll inverted first. His controls locked. Chen tried everything to regain control, trimming the aircraft, kicking the rudder, pulling with both hands, but the stick wouldn't move. The German pilot, realizing Chen was helpless, stayed behind and took his time. On the radio, Chen's voice came through, calm and resigned. "Tell my brother I'm sorry." The Fw-190 fired a burst. Chen's canopy exploded, and the Mustang rolled uncontrollably, falling 20,000 feet into German farmland. Rodriguez watched as Chen's crew chief packed up his belongings that night. Among the items were letters Chen had written to his brother, all dated for the next 6 months. Chen had written them in advance, just in case. His brother received these letters one by one, each offering advice on school, engineering, and survival. By early March, Rodriguez had seen 7 pilots die in the same way. High-speed engagement, a roll attempt, control surfaces locking, and the German pilot capitalizing on it. Rodriguez had mentioned the aileron issue to the engineering officer in February. The officer replied that the control system was within factory specifications, and making changes would void the warranty. Additionally, no field mechanic had the authorization to modify flight control systems. Any change to that would require approval from North American Aviation, which was located 5,000 miles away in California. For 3 nights, Rodriguez lay awake in his bunk, thinking about Lieutenant Chen and the 6 other pilots he had lost. The problem wasn't complex. At high speeds, aerodynamic pressure on the control surfaces caused significant resistance. The pilot had to fight against 200 lbs of force just to move the ailerons. The solution was simple: add counter-tension to the control cable, reducing the force needed to move the controls. Basic physics. Rodriguez knew he could fix it with just a piece of safety wire, 12 inches bent into a specific shape, installed as a tensioner on the aileron linkage. It would take 8 minutes. However, it would also violate the Army Air Force maintenance manual and could get him into serious trouble. But Rodriguez knew watching another pilot die the same way wasn't an option. So despite the risk, he went ahead and broke the rules. He took a piece of safety wire from the supplies, bent it into the required shape, and installed it on Mitchell's aileron linkage. The modification took just 8 minutes, but it made a big difference. It created counter-tension in the control cable and reduced the force required to move the ailerons from 200 lbs to approximately 140 lbs, just enough to make them controllable. Nobody noticed the change. The inspection crew didn't check the aileron control tension that morning. They were focused on engine oil levels and ammunition loads. Rodriguez said nothing and watched Mitchell taxi to the runway, take off and disappear into the sky, heading toward the German fighters. What happened in the next 23 minutes would change how every Mustang in England flew. Mitchell's flight crossed the English Channel at 09:33 hours, with 4 Mustangs flying in a loose finger formation. Mitchell was the lead on the left side of the formation, with his wingman, Lieutenant Edward Morrison, a 19-year-old Texan with 8 missions under his belt. The bomber stream, 90 miles ahead, was made up of 300 B-17s heading toward Brunswick. German radar would pick them up soon, and Fw-190s would launch to intercept. Mitchell's palms were sweating inside his gloves. He had watched Chen die, watched 7 other good pilots fall, because they couldn't roll at high speed. Today, he was flying directly into 22 Fw-190s with just a piece of safety wire in his aileron linkage. It was either going to work or he'd die trying. The radio crackled. Bandits 10 high, Angels 25. German fighters were diving from 25,000 feet. Mitchell looked up to see 6 Fw-190s dropping out of the sun, standard Luftwaffe tactics. The plan was to dive from altitude, build speed, and force the Americans into a high-speed fight. Mitchell's flight leader called the brake. Brake left. Brake left! The 4 Mustangs turned hard to the left, with the Fw-190s following them down. Mitchell pulled into the turn, feeling his Mustang accelerate as the airspeed climbed through 350 mph, then 370, 390. The Fw-190 locked onto Morrison. The German pilot was skilled, staying right behind Morrison through the turn, staying close at around 400 yards. Morrison's Mustang hit 410 mph, and the Fw-190 fired, sending tracers streaking past Morrison's canopy. Mitchell made a split-second decision. He rolled hard to the right, pulling the stick all the way over. His Mustang should have barely responded at 410 mph with the ailerons locked, but they moved. Not smoothly like at lower speeds, but they moved. Mitchell's Mustang snapped 90 degrees in 2 seconds at 410 mph, something that should have been impossible. The Fw-190 chasing Morrison, the German pilot didn't anticipate Mitchell's move. Mitchell rolled behind him, and the Fw-190 pilot realized too late that he was now at 350 yards and closing in fast. The German tried to break away, but Mitchell followed, pushing his Mustang to 420 mph. The ailerons responded sluggishly, but they moved. He locked the Fw-190 in his sights, fired his 650 caliber machine guns, and at 300 yards, the German fighter's left wing shattered. The Fw-190 snapped right, plummeting and breaking apart at 18,000 feet. Mitchell pulled out of the dive, his hands shaking. He had just rolled at 420 mini-tasm, something no P-51B pilot had ever successfully done in combat. The modification worked. Morrison's voice crackled over the radio. "Lead, how did you roll that fast?" Mitchell keyed his radio but said nothing. He didn't know what to say or how to explain that a piece of safety wire had just saved both their lives. The engagement continued for another 6 minutes. Mitchell's flight destroyed 3 Fw-190s, and they lost no one. When Mitchell landed back at Debden at 10:47 hours, his Mustang had 23 bullet holes in the tail, but none hit the critical systems. He taxied to his spot, and Rodriguez was waiting. Mitchell shut down the engine, climbed out, his legs shaky from the adrenaline crash. He walked over to Rodriguez and looked at him for a long moment. Rodriguez asked if the modification worked. Mitchell replied it had saved his life. He had rolled at 420 mph, something that should have been impossible, and got behind an Fw-190 that could have killed Morrison. He shot it down and changed everything. Rodriguez asked if Mitchell wanted the modification removed. Mitchell said no, that every Mustang in the squadron needed it that night. Rodriguez hesitated, saying that installing unauthorized modifications on 15 aircraft without command approval would get them both caught and likely court-martialed. They'd both spend the rest of the war in Leavenworth. Mitchell argued that watching more pilots die like Chen would be worse, and he'd take full responsibility, telling command that he had ordered it. Rodriguez called it a stupid idea. If they were caught, they'd both face severe consequences. But Mitchell didn't care. He had seen too many friends die in the past 6 weeks. If the modification could save number 8, then regulations could go to hell. Morrison approached and overheard the conversation, saying he wanted the modification too. He believed Mitchell had saved his life by rolling at 420 mph, something he had never seen a P-51B do. Rodriguez looked at them both and said he would need help. That night, Rodriguez worked alone in the hangar until other crew chiefs arrived around midnight and asked what he was doing. Rodriguez explained the modification, showed them the wire tensioner, how it reduced the control force at high speeds, and how it had saved Mitchell's life earlier that morning, and how it could save more lives tomorrow. The crew chiefs watched, asked questions, and Rodriguez demonstrated how to bend the wire, where to install it, and how to test the tension. By 0200 hours, 3 crew chiefs were helping. By 0400, they had modified 9 aircraft: Mitchell's flight, Morrison's flight, and Hayes's flight. No one reported it, asked for permission, or filed any paperwork. They just installed the modifications and went to bed. Mitchell flew his second mission with the wire modification on March 7th, escorting bombers to Berlin. His flight encountered 8 Fw-190s over Hamburg. In another high-speed engagement, Mitchell rolled at 435 mph, got behind an Fw-190, shot it down, and landed back at Debden with 2 kills in 2 days, both in situations where he should have died. Morrison scored his first kill on March 8th, taking down a Fw-190 over handover in a high-speed rolling scissors at 410 mph. He stayed with the German 4 reversals, something no P-51B pilot had ever done before. Mitchell shot down the Fw-190 at 390 mph. He returned to Debden shaking, telling Rodriguez that the modification had saved his life. Word spread quickly among the pilots. The modified Mustangs could roll at high speeds, while the unmodified ones could not. The difference was clear, and it was a matter of life or death. On March 10th, crew chiefs from the 355th Fighter Group arrived at Debden to inquire about the modification. Rodriguez showed them how it worked, and they went back to their base that night and modified their aircraft. By March 12th, 30 Mustangs had the modification. By March 15th, 60 Mustangs across 4 fighter groups were modified. No one reported it, filed paperwork, or asked for permission. The crew chiefs simply installed the modifications and signed off the maintenance logs as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Pilots who had been losing high-speed engagements started winning them. The kill ratio improved, and the loss rates dropped. Mustang pilots began seeking out Fw-190s instead of avoiding them. The aircraft that couldn't roll above 400 mph could suddenly do so, though not perfectly, not smoothly, but enough. Enough to survive, enough to win. By March 20th, the 354th Fighter Group had the highest kill ratio of any Mustang unit in England, with 47 German fighters destroyed in just 3 weeks. 3 American pilots had been lost, but none in high-speed engagements. The modified Mustangs were now winning fights that unmodified Mustangs couldn't survive. Command took notice. Major General William Kiaptner of the 8th Fighter Command saw the statistics. The 354th was outperforming every other Mustang unit by a 3.1 ratio. Something had changed, and Captain ordered an investigation. On March 24th, an engineering inspection team arrived at Debden. 3 inspectors went through the aircraft, reviewed the maintenance logs, and interviewed pilots. On March 26th, Captain Richard Hollis walked into the hangar where Rodriguez was working. Hollis said he wanted to inspect Mitchell's aircraft personally. Something about the kill ratio didn't add up. Rodriguez tried to divert him to another aircraft, explaining that Mitchell's Mustang was due for an oil change. Hollis insisted on inspecting Mitchell's aircraft. Rodriguez watched Hollis climb into the cockpit, check the control stick, and inspect the cables. Then Hollis reached for the inspection panel on the left wing root. Rodriguez's heart started pounding. Hollis removed the panel, exposed the aileron control linkage, and found the safety wire tensioner. Hollis stared at it for a long time, then climbed out of the cockpit and walked over to Rodriguez. He asked one question: "What the hell is that?" Rodriguez explained everything: the modification, how it worked, why he installed it, and how many aircraft had been modified, all without authorization. Hollis wrote everything down, his face giving nothing away. When Rodriguez finished, Hollis asked how many aircraft had the modification. Rodriguez said maybe 60, maybe more, across 4 fighter groups. Hollis then asked who had authorized it. Rodriguez answered nobody. "I installed the first one on Mitchell's aircraft on March 6th without permission. The crew chief saw it working, copied it, and spread it across the command, all unauthorized." Hollis closed his notebook and asked if Rodriguez understood the severity of the situation. Modifying flight control systems without authorization was a court-martial offense. Prison was likely, and a dishonorable discharge was guaranteed. Rodriguez said he understood and explained that he'd watched 7 pilots die in 6 weeks because their controls locked at high speed. Watching number 8 die wasn't an option. Hollis didn't respond, didn't arrest Rodriguez, and didn't call the MPs. Hollis said he wanted to test fly one of the modified aircraft. That afternoon, Hollis flew Mitchell's Mustang. Rodriguez watched from the flight line as the Mustang took off, climbed to 30,000 feet, and performed high-speed rolls again and again. 40 minutes later, the Mustang landed. Hollis taxied to the hard stand, shut down the engine, and climbed out. He walked over to Rodriguez, who was expecting handcuffs. Hollis looked at him and simply said 3 words: "It works." He then added that the modification reduced control force by approximately 30% at high speeds, making the aircraft safer and more controllable. It should have been part of the original design. Rodriguez felt his legs go weak. Hollis then said he was filing a report. Rodriguez knew he would probably be court-martialed, as what he had done was still illegal. However, Hollis would include one thing in the report: the modification had saved approximately 40 lives in 3 weeks. Maybe it would matter, maybe it wouldn't. On March 28th, Hollis filed his report, which landed on Captain's desk the following day. Captain read the report twice, then reviewed the statistics. The 354th Fighter Group had destroyed 47 German fighters in 3 weeks, losing 3 pilots, none in high-speed engagements. The 355th Fighter Group had similar numbers, as did the 357th, all groups with the wire modification. The unmodified groups were losing pilots at twice the rate. Captain called a meeting on March 30th. The legal staff suggested Rodriguez and Mitchell should be court-martialed for installing unauthorized modifications on over 60 aircraft. The engineering staff agreed, saying the modification hadn't been properly tested and should be removed immediately. They suggested grounding all modified aircraft. Captain listened to the discussion, said nothing, then asked one question: how many pilots had died in high-speed engagements before the modification? The operations staff checked the records and reported that 47 Mustang pilots had been lost in 6 weeks, most in high-speed engagements when the controls locked. Captain then asked how many pilots had died after the modification. The operations staff checked again and found that only 3 pilots had been lost in 3 weeks, none in high-speed engagements. Captain then asked if anyone understood what these numbers meant. Nobody answered. Captain replied that it meant Rodriguez and Mitchell had saved 40 lives in 3 weeks, 40 pilots who should have died but didn't because a crew chief had installed a piece of wire without permission. The legal staff countered that regulations and the chain of command existed for a reason. Captain asked if 40 dead pilots would have been safer. The legal staff argued that wasn't the point. Captain shot back saying, "It's exactly the point." On April 2nd, Captain issued General Order 2344, officially approving the safety wire modification for field installation on P-51B aircraft. All Mustangs in the 8th Fighter Command were to receive the modification within 30 days. No disciplinary action would be taken against the mechanics or pilots who had installed the modification without approval. The order also included a special mention. Credit for this modification belongs to First Lieutenant Carl Mitchell and Technical Sergeant James Rodriguez of the 354th Fighter Group. Their initiative and ingenuity have saved the lives of approximately 40 American pilots and significantly improved the combat effectiveness of the 8th Fighter Command. The modification spread quickly across the 8th Fighter Command in April, reaching every P-51B in England, 240 aircraft. It then moved to the 9th Air Force and the 15th Air Force in Italy. By June 1944, every P-51B in the Army Air Force, over 600 aircraft, had received the wire modification, all because Rodriguez had installed a piece of wire on Mitchell's Mustang without permission. The numbers told the story. Before the modification, the 8th Air Force was losing 2 Mustang pilots for every German fighter they shot down. After the modification, they were destroying 3 German fighters for every Mustang lost. The modification saved an estimated 180 American pilots' lives between March and June 1944. These 180 pilots rolled at high speed when they should have died. They survived because Rodriguez installed a piece of wire without asking permission. Mitchell flew 67 combat missions between March 1944 and May 1945. He shot down 9 German aircraft, 6 of them in high-speed engagements, and 3 in situations where his controls should have locked and he should have died. He survived every mission because Rodriguez had installed a piece of wire without asking for permission. Mitchell stayed in the Air Force after the war, flying F-80 Shooting Stars and later F-86 Sabres in Korea. He shot down 2 MiG-15s, both in high-speed engagements. Each time, he thought about Rodriguez and the piece of wire that had saved his life in 1944. Mitchell retired as a lieutenant colonel in 1965. After 21 years of service, 153 combat missions, 11 kills, and 0 times shot down. Mitchell kept a piece of safety wire in his desk drawer for 40 years, the same type Rodriguez had used in March 1944, 12 inches of stainless steel, 0.032 inches in diameter. When people asked about it, he would show them and tell them the story about Rodriguez, 7 dead pilots, and a piece of wire that changed everything. He spoke about the difference between following regulations and saving lives. Rodriguez stayed in the Army Air Force until 1946, working on aircraft in England, France, and Germany. After the war, he returned to Oklahoma, where he opened a mechanic shop and worked on cars and farm equipment for 35 years. He rarely talked about the modification. When asked, he'd simply say it was just part of the job. Mechanics fix things, that's all. Morrison survived 43 combat missions after receiving the modification, shooting down 16 more German aircraft, totaling 22 kills. After the war, he became a test pilot at Wright Field, ensuring every young engineer he worked with understood that the best solutions sometimes come from desperate mechanics in combat theaters, not from engineering departments. In 1989, the Air Force Historical Research Agency published a study on field modifications during World War II, and the safety wire modification was included as a primary example of effective field engineering. The study estimated that the modification contributed to approximately 180 American pilot survivals and improved overall Mustang combat effectiveness by 34%. Mitchell was interviewed for the study when he was 71 years old. When asked why he had risked court-martial to install an unauthorized modification, Mitchell said, "Rodriguez had watched 7 friends die because they couldn't roll at high speed. Watching number 8 die wasn't an option. Regulations could wait." Carl Mitchell died in 2001 at the age of 83. His funeral at Arlington National Cemetery drew over 200 attendees, many of whom were former fighter pilots, men who had flown Mustangs in World War II, F-86s in Korea, and F-4s in Vietnam. These were men who had survived high-speed combat in aircraft that could roll when needed. James Rodriguez passed away in 2004 at the age of 86 and was buried in Oklahoma. His obituary mentioned his military service but did not mention the modification. His children found the citation from General Keeptoner among his belongings. They hadn't known that their father had saved 180 lives with a piece of wire. Today, the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton displays a P-51B Mustang. Inside the left wing, visible through a cutaway panel, is a small piece of safety wire. The placard reads, "Field Modification by First Lieutenant Carl Mitchell and Technical Sergeant James Rodriguez, March 1944. This simple modification improved aileron authority at high speeds and saved an estimated 180 American pilots' lives." Most visitors walk past without stopping, but veteran pilots always pause. They understand. If this story moved you the way it moved us, please hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to share this story with more people who care about these forgotten heroes. Subscribe to join our community. We're rescuing these stories from archives every week. Real people, real courage, real innovation that changed history. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Texas, Germany, Australia, Japan. Our community spans the entire world. You're not just watching. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for making sure Carl Mitchell and James Rodriguez don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered. You're helping make that happen.